The Leshen do not speak, gnaws at the storm blood edges of the wild. What if this hush is not choice but chains? Long before the conjunction's storm, before elven spells fractured the world, there was a pact. Before traded for elven spells, survival voices fractured the world, buried in the soil to cage ancient magics. They are not spirits. They are echoes of the first who bore the Witcher's mark, their tongues severed to bind what could not be killed. What if the Leshen's silence is a curse, not a trait? Their silence is no accident. The conjunction scars run deeper than shattered stars-buried sorcery writhes beneath roots, waiting. Long before Witchers bore the sign, Leshen made a pact, tongues for tombs. They sealed elven magic in their own flesh, becoming sentinels of the fracture. What if their muteness is a sacrifice, not a curse? A spell to starve the old power of voice, of song, of speech that once bent worlds. The Witcher's craft did not begin with alchemy, it began with this, a blood oath to tend what could not be slain. The Leshen are not spirits, they are the first keepers, bound to a silence that holds the continent together. What wakes when they speak again? What if the Leshen aren't nature spirits, but ancient Witchers who made a pact to survive the conjunction? The Witcher 3 Codex names them as pre-human entities, older than elven kingdoms. Sapkowski's timeline anchors their arrival at the conjunction's collapse 500 years before human settlers. They did not come with ships or sorcery, they came with silence. Unconfirmed accounts in *Blood of Elves* suggest the first Witchers sought their aid, not as monsters to slay, but as guardians to bargain with. A blood pact, some scholars argue, traded their voices for stability. The Leshen sealed elven sorcery beneath root and stone. Their muteness became a vault, no song remembers their sacrifice. Only the forests hum with unspoken oaths. What wakes when the continent's foundations crack? What price does silence demand when broken? Ancient forest spirits, some are pre-human continent natives, some are summoned via druid craft. The Witcher 3's Codex entry pauses here, as if the words themselves fear what comes next. But the forests remember. Before the conjunction sky split, before elven towers crumbled into the continent's bones, there were others keepers of the wild's first breath, bound not by druids, but by a blood older than sorcery. The Leshen do not sing, not truly. Their voices were traded, long ago, for a lock on the elven magic that still writhes beneath the soil. You have felt it, the weight of ancient roots pressing against your ribs, the scent of pine thick with unspoken vows. The conjunction scars are not just in the land, but in the silence. The first Witchers, those alchemical paragons, did not arise from nothing. Their creation bled the Leshen dry literally. A pact carved in sap and sinew, sealing away the old sorcery that might have drowned the world in chaos. What does it mean to sacrifice your voice to time, to become a monument to what was lost? The Leshen are not guardians. They are tombstones, living and breathing, their forms woven from the same thread that binds the continent's shattered foundations. When Geralt signs flare in their groves, it is not malice they sensate, is recognition, a kinship of sacrifice. The forests hum because they must. Every rustling leaf is a cipher, every shadow a ledger of debts unpaid. The first Witchers walked away from the pact with silver in their veins. The Leshen remain, rooted and ruined, their silence the price of your world's survival. What wakes when the continent's foundations crack? Perhaps not a god, perhaps a whisper, finally free. And what price does silence demand when broken? Ask the trees. They are made of the answer. Word count 285. A Velen peasant once whispered they don't speak because they can't. Not a riddle, a warning. The Leshen's silence is no accident, it is a wound. The wild hunt howls through forests, but the Leshen hush elders say they chose it. To survive the conjunction's purge, they bound their tongues with elven blood, sealing sorcery into bark and bone. The trees remember, their roots coil around a pact older than Keedwin. The hunt is not chaos. It is inheritance, elven ghosts in stolen flesh, hunting what they failed to burn, and the Leshen. They are the ash that refused to die. Witcher blood, thinned and twisted, turned to guardians of a vow, no elf, no sorcerer. No god shall unmake the world again. Their silence is the lock, their roots the key, but Pact's blade. The conjunction scars did not fadathi pooled. in the Leshen's hollow eyes, in the hunt's endless march. What does a forest whisper when its voice is a prison? What does a tree become when its roots drink witcher blood? The peasant's tale ends with a scream. A Leshen's hand reaching from a thicket, fingers too long, too still. It didn't scream, the witness stammered. It sang a sound like a blade unsheathing, a sound like a promise. The Leshen are not spirits. They are the first and last line of a war that never ended. And every time the hunt passes, the trees ache, waiting for the price of silence to be due. The trial of the grasses left its mark on every witcher who walked the continent's fractured bones. A single line in blood of elves lingers, unremarked. A mutated witcher's skin shimmers like bark under moonlight, his breath thick with the scent of pine resin. Not alchemy, not mutation, remnant. A signature of something older than the elven curse, something that predated the conjunction's scream. The Leshen do not mimic life, they are life, twisted by a bargain no grimoire dares name. Consider Velen. The first witchers emerged from its marshes, their contracts written in blood and silence. But what if the contract was not with mutated beasts or elven sorcerers? What if the first mutagen was not a potion, but a transaction? The trial's horror's claws, fangs, eyes that see too deep mirror the Leshen's own, not coincidence, echoes of an understanding. The Leshen's stillness in the conjunction's wake was no accident, it was a vow. They buried their voices to bury the magic that would have unmade the witchers. The forest remembers. In the marrow of every oak, in the rod of every root, the price festers. The Leshen do not speak, but their bodies do. A witcher's hand, gnarled like a branch. A Leshen's whisper, laced with the same silver toxins that seep from Velen's soil. The first witchers did not conquer the wild, they became its guardians, their mutations a seal, their contracts a chain. The Leshen are not prisoners of the conjunction, they are its wardens, and the silence, a currency, a debt. The trees ache not from forgotten war, but from a pact that cannot hold forever. What happens when the witcher's blood thins, when the last of the first mutagens turns to dust? The Leshen do not speak, but their roots coil, their branches blade, waiting for the day the price of silence is due. Is their silence a choice or a curse? The answer lies in the scars of the first witcher, scars that pulse, even now, with the heartbeat of a bargain never broken. The Leshen's silence after the conjunction defies easy answers. Sapkowski's texts hint at a void where magic should have roared. Why would beings tied to the wilds remain mute as elven sorcery fractured? The trial of the grasses cannot be unlearned, yet witchers find Leshen venom curiously familiar. A pattern emerges, frayed at the edges. Could their silence be a scar, not a flaw? The conjunction scars reshape the continent, but these wounds pulse with intent. Witchers know pacts demand currency. What if the first among them bartered their voices to bind elven magic's chaos? The Leshen's stillness becomes a cipher, not a weakness. Their nature masks a role as wardens, their muteness a seal. But Sapkowski leaves no smoking quill, no contract, no witness. CDPR games let players hunt them as monsters, yet their behavior whispers of something older. The trial's endurance suggests a shared memory, a bond that outlives flesh. If the Leshen guard a secret, it is one even witchers fear to name. The silence holds. The silence chooses. The trial of the grasses carved more than flesh it bound. Its mutations etched pacts into bone, whispers into blood. The Leshen's silence is no accident, it is a scar, a vow. When the conjunction shattered the world's weave, elven sorcery bled into the continent's veins. To stop the rot, the first witchers made a choice, seal the magic or become it. They drank the elixirs, paid the price, and became guardians of what should never wake. Their voices were the final sacrifice, a barrier, a seal. The Leshen are not spirits. They are the record's last keepers of a buried war, their tongues cursed to stillness so the old magics might sleep. The conjunction scars run deeper than history records. Every twisted limb, every hollow gaze is a relic of that pact. The witchers of Kaedwen knew the cost of their craft but not the price. The Leshen's silence is not a mystery, it is a monument, a warning carved in flesh. What was sealed in blood cannot be unmade. The continent breathes under their watch, unaware the Leshen's curse is the only thing holding the world together. What remains when the silence breaks? The answer lies in the trial's ashes, in the scars that never fade, in the pact that outlives even gods. The Leshen's silence was no accident. A covenant carved in blood and whispered in the bones of the earth bound their tongues to a dying magic. They were not guardians of forests, but keepers of a wound stitched closed by those who walked the line between hunter and hunted. The first Witchers, faced with the conjunctions unraveling, did not slay the Leshen. They made them vessels. A people who traded speech for stability, they were folded into the land's pulse to cage the elven sorcery that still seethes beneath the continent's skin. What withers when a spell is forgotten? The Witcher schools, built on monsters that thrived in that caged chaos, now crumble as their prey fades. The source gifts once thought to bless our curses, replaying the same bargain. Each flare of elven magic is a crack in the Leshen's pact, a debt unpaid. The forests breathe heavier. The beasts grow thinner, the land itself mourns a language it can no longer speak. The Witcher archive turns away not from fear, but from truth. Their art was always a parasite on a borrowed world. Every contract has an end, every silence a clock. The Leshen's whispers are not warnings. They are the last gasps of a spell that once kept ruin at bay. And now, as the continent's ecology fractures, the cost of that survival is being paid in kind. What dies first, the keepers of the pact, or the world they kept alive? What if the Nymrigar's hive mind is a Witcher's failed ambition, not evolution? A fractured echo of a spell meant to bind chaos, now knowing its own creator. What if the Leshen's silence isn't sacrifice, it's a wound still bleeding? Next, the Nymrigar. Their story begins where the Witcher's hubris ended. In the conjunction's shadow, the Leshen's silence thickened. A pact bled into soil, not speech. What if their stillness is a scar? The trial of the grasses cannot be unlearned, its roots drink Witcher blood. Schools fade, monsters fade. The balance they kept now starves them. What dies first, the hunters or the hunt? The Leshen's gaze holds a warning, not of magic lost, but of kinship fraying. You think the forest breathes. Listen, some contracts demand more than life. What if the first Witchers didn't vanish? What if they became the price? The question festers. Can a curse outlast its purpose?